In one of the most ironic social media posts of all time, Asmongold makes the claim.
Also, I will say, I know obviously Asmongold is a much larger entity on the online space than I am. I'm not an idiot. But it is nice to see like other people, like especially like people I follow, like finally talking about this asshole. Because like I feel like he gets so much coverage. Like not like people covering him, but like protection from all of his takes. Asmon reacted to it? Of course he did.
In response to Mehdi Hassan, that the average IQ in Somalia is 68, and that this claim isn't racist, but a fact. What makes this post ironic is the very last bit where Zach claims Hassan's tweet is an attempt to push a narrative. Well, not only is this Asmongold's attempt to push a narrative, but the claim itself that African people have low IQs is also an attempt to push a narrative.
Yeah, this was so stupid. I saw that tweet, I was like, come on.
Back to the work of Richard
I knew that.
Flynn. This guy, a literal self-described scientific racist. This man was part of a secret eugenics conference where, and I'm not joking,
which is a crazy, but Asmongold doesn't do research, you guys. He just knows things. It's common sense, as he would put it. Yeah. It's common sense. That's a fact. IQ tests are good markers of intelligence. They absolutely have nothing to do with, you know, culture relativity in the sense that you have to base it against the people in that culture. So like the IQ of people who are in a well-resourced environment generally is probably going to be higher than people who like live on a farm. But that's not indicative of the entire race of people.
There were people favorably arguing in favor of pedophilia. So, yeah, this is the guy Asmongold is quoting. Lynn published a paper in 1982
I didn't see that coming.
IQ in Africa in the pseudoscientific journal The Mankind Quarterly, a white supremacist outlet that is currently maintained by the hilariously named Human Diversity Foundation, a far-right white nationalist company.
They always, like, you can just look at the name of something and like your spider sense should go off. When I see shit that's like America First, or it's like National, or the right news, or this, I'm like, this is fake. This is not real. This is not real sources.
In this journal, Flynn argued that the IQ of sub-Saharan Africa was around 70. Notice I said sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, Lynn's argument was that a continent that consists of about 50 countries all had a similar very low IQ. The obvious problem with this argument is that Africa is huge and there are over 1 billion people.
They included Tanzania with more than 100 ethnic groups and the Democratic Republic of Congo with more than 200 ethnic groups. Fun fact, you guys, I am Congolese American from the DRC. My family's from the DRC. There's a lore drop for you guys. I am Congolese.
With over 1,000 different ethnic groups. Nigeria alone has more than 200 ethnic groups, and that's a single country. Do you think Lynn tested every ethnic group in Nigeria, let alone the rest of the continent? Yeah, me neither.
And that's the thing too, though. Like, people do this all the time where they love to, when they talk about outgroups, you guys obviously know about in-group, outgroup biases. When they talk about outgroups, they flatten it. And I'm guilty. Sometimes I do that too, where I'm like, these are all conservative things, even though more often than not, I'm correct. But when it comes to stuff like intelligence from like if you're trying to, first off, just as a basis, if you are doing race-based intelligence, not only are you racist, you are an idiot. There is no race of people anywhere that are naturally more intelligent than anyone. That's not how that works. That's not how intelligence works. Intelligence is not simply a numerical formula, right? It's not just, oh, you can do math real good, you must be really intelligent. There are different dimensions of intelligence, emotional intelligence, for example, which gets really underlooked. But what they do is they will be like, we believe this entire race to be inferior for X amount of reasons, mostly due to cultural differences. We eat with forks. They eat with their hands. Eating with your hands is barbaric. Ergo, this entire group of people must be barbarians. Ergo, they must have low intellect. Because if they had high intellect like us, they'd be using cutlery, right? Even though, like, literally every other culture besides Americans, and even Americans do too, but largely, their food is eaten with their hands. Like, have you guys ever stopped and think about actually how many types of food you eat with just your hands? Like pizza, you eat with your hands. Hamburger, you eat with your hands. Chicken wings, you eat with your hands. Barbecue, you eat with your hands. Hot dogs, you eat with your hands. Popcorn, you eat with your hands. But then they'll be like, these people eat rice with their hands. Disgusting barbarians. Like, buddy, besides like soups and like some pastries, like cakes and stuff, most shit you can eat with just your hands straight up. I eat my candy bars with a steak knife and a salad fork. Thank you very much. Like, there's a lot of especially Western ideals really truly comes from appearance. Like, be real. You don't need a fucking salad knife and a different kind of knives. You don't need a dinner fork and a salad fork. You don't need any of that stuff. That stuff was reserved for like the rich people of like medieval times, right? Where they had access to so much wealth that they could just start doing bullshit. Like, here's my soup spoon, but here's my cereal spoon. And this is my salad fork, but this is my dinner fork. Like, shut the fuck up. You don't need that delineation between your utensils. The fucking fork.
Anyway, the important part is other psychologists went back and actually checked Lynn's work. Wichards, Dolan, and von der Maas published a systematic review in the journal Intelligence, looking at IQ data from sub-Saharan African samples. What they found was that because African countries are developing countries, they hadn't experienced the variables that caused the Flynn effect, such as improvements to...
You used to get shamed when you're eating tortillas with beans in your hands. Exactly. It's just racism. It is racism, and it is cultural relativity ignorance. Things from a culture compared to other cultures naturally are going to be different. But it doesn't make one inherently worse or better. That's why I get so blown away. Like, living in America, I lived here my whole life. Living in America my entire life. Living in a country with the most diversity, right? Like, by design, different cultures all the time. It's insane to me that even the concept of like cultural superiority exists, because American culture is shaped by fucking capitalism, corporations. It's nothing intrinsic. There's like, think about it. There are things that might be intrinsic to living in, I live in Los Angeles, to living in LA, you know, and it's like, oh, there's an elote guy around the corner, right? Oh, it's Saturday at X amount of time. We know what's going to happen. Music's going to be playing over here. Depending on parts of LA you're in, it's 7 o'clock Friday night. Streetlights are on. You're inside. Like, there are things that happen even like in subcultures, but like things that are like inherently American, it's usually based off of corporate interest. Like, your childhood was full of ads, so you have nostalgia for, oh my God, remember we used to go to Blockbuster and rent movies? Yeah. Remember we used to fall for ad copy and buy shit from companies? Yes. But like, culture, the food you grew up with, like, if you come from a different culture, you probably had your culture's food, but your culture's food was not exclusive to you. If you were Mexican and you live in California, there are other non-Mexican people who were eating your food, right? You could go to stores, maybe not cooked as well, you know, because, you know, you have boiled those down. But guess what? I've eaten burritos. I've had mole. I've had menudo, right? I've also had Italian food. I've had Thai food. I've had Chinese food. I've had food from different cultures that don't even share the same like time zone than I do, because I live in America. I have access to all these things. If you were to remove all those things from American culture, what do Americans have? That's why I always find it so weird. It's like, you want to shit on people like Smash AT, want to shit on Asha for being Indian. I'm sure they've enjoyed Indian food. Oh, we hate these Muslims. They're invading our country, but you're going to go get shawarma? You hate these foreigners invading your country, but you love ICE. You want ICE to deport all these Mexicans, but oh shit, you got to go get your burritos. You got to go to Pinche Tacos. Like, it's so insane to me. lots of white people are mad that have a really distinct identity. White people, here's the thing. White people do have culture identity, but it's like you're Nordic, you're German, you're Ukrainian, you're like Russian, you're those things. But like white American culture is nothing specific. White American culture is isolation. White American culture is, I look out for myself. It is, oh, you're 18, get out of my house. It is, that's why they don't understand. That's why if you look at America, they'll be like, dude, you're 20 something years old, you live with your family, you're a loser. And it's like literally every other culture does multi-generational households because they love their families. They're not taught to be individualistic. We're taught to be a community. That's why if you look on the whole, right, when COVID broke out, America and like the UK had the hardest times with it, but like Asian cultures, more collectivist cultures had an easier time because they were looking out for the well-being of others. America is very individualistic. Like it's crazy. And it'll be like, oh, these other cultures are inferior. They have low IQs. It's like, what? I've seen more other cultures when it comes to white folks in America. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like white people act like as if like American culture is this like traditional enriching thing. And it's like American culture is literally other people's cultures interacting. That's how it functions. Like California, SoCal culture. You go to the beach, you get a fucking taco, you get a burrito. You know, like you do things that like geographically you should not be able to do. I shouldn't be able to go to the Santa Monica Pier and like take 2 steps, get a taco, drive down the street, have some Italian, and then finish off with some Chinese food. I shouldn't be able to do that, but I can because I live in America. Like that's the American culture. And guns,
nutrition, healthcare, and even toys. In other words, the environment is the most relevant variable in determining one's IQ score, not genetics. But let's rewind for a second because I mentioned something that you all may not be familiar with, the Flynn effect. The Flynn effect is the observed rise in IQ scores over time. Basically, if you gave an average person from 1901 a modern IQ test, they would score dramatically lower than the people of today. Not because they were genetically predisposed to being less intelligent, but because IQ tests measure certain types of abstract reasoning, pattern recognition, and problem solving that modern societies train us in constantly.
We're going to take a quick voyage over the cognitive history of the 20th century, because during that century, our minds have altered dramatically.
Long Beach.
As you all know, the cars that people drove in 1900 have altered because the roads are better and because of technology. And our minds have altered too. We've gone from people who confronted a concrete world. And
bro, I used to love TED Talks, and then I found out like more about TED Talks, and I'm like, come on, man, I can't have shit.
Analyze that world primarily in terms of how much it would benefit them, to people who confront a very complex world. And it's a world where we've had to develop new mental habits, new habits of mind. Now, this dramatic change was tensioned through massive IQ gains over time. And these have been truly massive. That is, we don't just get a few more questions right on IQ tests. We get far more questions right on IQ tests than each succeeding generation back to the time that they were invented. Indeed, if you score the people a century ago against modern norms, they would have an average IQ of 70. If you score us against their norms, we would have an average IQ of 130. Now, this has raised all sorts of questions.
It's annoying whenever a smaller channel calls out a much larger one, then the fans of the larger channel will attack the smaller one. That really happens primarily when you are talking about those channels that lean towards the right. I've noticed that from my own personal anecdotal experiences. I have covered people in the past where there's no backlash, right? Insignificant. But when I talk about people who are clearly right-leaning, like, okay, put it this way. I've done videos on legendary drops. I've done videos on Andy Pants. I get nothing from legendary drops. I get a couple here from Andy Pants videos. I do a video, not even a video on Asmongold. I do a tweet, a couple of tweets on him. Suddenly I'm getting bombarded on everything. Suddenly I'm on r/Asmongold. I'm in all these subreddits now, right? It's because these people tie their identity so much to the creators that they're watching. And because, like I said before, the creators that they're watching are, let's be real, bad people. Asmongold's a bad person. These are bad people, but they give them permission to be worse because look how bad he is. He's a slob. He's this. He's all the things people say, but look, he has money. He's just saying how it is. How dare you challenge my worldview? You're a smaller channel. You're just jealous. You want attention. You're never going to make it. You should give up. And because of all those things, I'm going to go attack you. How dare you criticize my Roach King? How dare you criticize my president, right? It's always that shit. Like I was saying before, it's the people who are insecure. They infuse insecurity in everything they do, so other insecure people latch onto that. And that becomes the bond that holds them. It's their insecurities. That's why the way they attack you is crazy. You'll have them doxing you because you said you didn't like that person's shirt. Or like Nicki Minaj fans, right? Now that Nicki's gone full Mar-a-Lago, they're just like, oh, well, you know what? You guys never liked her and she's always better. Yes, she's doing it for America. Yes, queen. Yes, 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 yes. And then they will try to get your family murdered because you lightly criticize the fact that Nicki Minaj is married to a pedophile. Because that's true. It's not made up, but it's something negative that they can't wipe under the rug or sweep under the rug. They'll just attack you. Oh, they'll be like, oh, okay, well, she went to pedophile, but guess what? At least she's married because your husband died in a car accident. Like, they'll do that shit. It's insecurity.
Were our immediate ancestors
Asmon has negative skin? Yeah, he has no skin.
Because 70 is normally the score for mental retardation. Or are we on the verge of all being gifted? Because 130 is the cutting line for giftedness.
James Flynn, the political scientist who documented this pattern, showed that IQ scores increased roughly 3 points per decade in many countries throughout the 20th century. So, if IQ were purely genetic and fixed, that kind of rapid change would be impossible. Evolution does not move that fast. Your great-grandparents were not biologically inferior to you. They just lived in a world with less formal education, less exposure to abstract symbols, less complex media, and different cognitive demands. Which means IQ scores are sensitive to the environment and improve when the environment improves.
And that is such an easy, logical explanation for things, right? If you were to go back into, let's say, like the early 1400s, right? And you were to talk about medicine, and you were to go your medical knowledge as a regular person versus like a regular person's medical knowledge in that time period, like they were saying before, you would look like an idiot because you didn't mention that bio produces the yellow humors. You're not using leeches for to clean out the blood. You wash your hands before you do surgery. Why? You're talking about germs and bacteria. Like, what are you talking about? You're a witch, burn you, right? Environment has always played a factor in people's upbringing. I mean, goddamn, we have nature versus nurture all the time. If you grew up in an environment where everyone you knew were doctors and you saw textbooks and medical books all the day, every day, and you would read them for fun, right? Versus a normal person who grew up in just the suburbs, yeah, you're probably going to do better in terms of your medical knowledge. You're probably going to have more affluence, right? Because of the environment you grew up in. That doesn't mean that other person is dumb and can never learn. But that's just your environment. Yeah, can I light a listen, I can't light if I were to be dropped, if we were to Fortnite drop me into an island, I'd be dead within the hour. I'm not built for survival. I don't know what plants to eat. I don't know how to what's the process called? Like remove salt from the drinking water, from the water so I can drink it. I don't know how to build a shelter, how to start a fire, anything like that. I don't know any of that shit. I'll die. It's not because my IQ is too low to figure things out. I do not have that sort of intelligence. I can't do that. I can do lots of other things. Desalination, yeah. There you go, thank you. But for example, I know a lot of stuff, but sometimes I forget the words. That doesn't make me stupid. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. I just have 1,000 things going on in my brain at any given moment. But I know things. I can do certain things I can't do. But to try to attribute that to be like, oh, it's because you're black, that's why you're stupid. You're African, so you're dumb. And it's like, that's idiotic. Like, you're talking about the birthplace of civilization. You think people were dumb? You know what I'm saying? Like, they talk about things. I'm like, you guys don't be like, oh, like, you know what, those native tribes. I'm like, the people who discovered how the stars worked, the people who, because of their advancements, you have GPS. You're saying that those people have genetically been inferior to you. There's not one culture that has created everything. That's why we're a collective. That's why humans survive by collectivism. Not one culture has done everything. Okay, we build upon things. We bit by bit, right? With each turn, we advance a little further. That's how a drill works.
Access to schooling, nutrition, healthcare, the complexities of daily life, all of these things are relevant, and none were accounted for in Lynn's work. Because of course they weren't. Lynn was a self-described scientific racist. His goal was to show how inferior black people were. Richard Lynn's work on race and IQ heavily influenced.
Also, I know this is a 9-minute video. I'm dragging it. I'm dragging it. But I love the idea still of people thinking like certain races are inferior, and then the justifications they have to come up with when that race beats them. Like Jesse Owens winning in the, 1933 Berlin Olympics? Like, there's no way. Oh, well, they're physically gifted, sure, but their brains and capacity are small. You sure about that? You want to talk about all the black inventors that you benefit from today? No? Traffic lights? Refrigeration to, keep things safe, especially during like transport for medical equipment or like blood? No? Like, it's crazy. It's so crazy. It's so insane. Like, that's why racism to me is so weird, because it's like if you're racist, you will always be objectively wrong in your assumptions. Always. You will always be wrong because your basis of reality is on the premise that someone's skin color dictates their intellectual cap. And then when you see people of your race engaging in things that you would consider to be inferior, you have no counter argument. You can't just say, well, this guy grew up in, like, I'm not trying to be mean to anyone, but this person grew up in like the Appalachians, right? In Appalachia. This person grew up, let's just be general. This person grew up in an impoverished area. I grew up in the suburbs. We're both white guys, but he's a drug addict and he's failed everything. And he can't do anything. Meanwhile, I have a successful career. I have that. But if whiteness makes you inherently intelligent and superior, why is he not succeeding too? I wonder why that's the case. Like,
The Bell Curve, a 1994 book by psychologist
the fucking
Richard
bell
J.
curve has
Bernstein
ruined so many
and
things.
Political scientist Charles Murray that argued intelligence is largely shaped by genetics with some environmental influence, and that IQ is a stronger predictor of life outcomes, income, job success, crime, out-of-wedlock births, than the socio.
What if you dropped Asmongold into an African? If you dropped Asmongold outside of his home, you know that episode of SpongeBob where he goes into Sandy's tree dome and there's no water in there, and he starts like asphyxiating and his skin starts to gray out. That happens to Asmongold the second he leaves the safety of his mold cave. You could drop him into any village, you wouldn't survive.
Economic status you were born into. The bell curve has been challenged by geneticists, psychologists, and statisticians for overstating the heritability of IQ across groups and for downplaying environmental variables, treating socially constructed racial categories as biological truth. Richard Lynn was one of the primary scholars who compiled and popularized cross-national IQ datasets, alleging to show innate racial hierarchies. This is the textbook definition of racism, by the way, that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and that those differences produce an inherent superiority or hierarchy. Anyway, those datasets compiled by Lynn were later cited approvingly by the bell curve authors Murray and Herrnstein. In fact, Murray has explicitly acknowledged Lynn's work as part of the research base for their claims about group IQ differences. The problem is not simply that Lynn held extreme views,
Ooh, we'll talk about communication after this because I do like that point.
Including open support for eugenics, but that his data practices have been widely criticized for flaws in its methodology. Upon reviewing Lynn's work, Witchert states the following: the assertion that the average IQ of Africans is below 70 is not tenable, even under the most lenient of inclusion criteria. Because Lynn missed a sizable portion of the relevant literature, their estimate of average IQ of Africans is clearly too low. Combined, the current systematic review and the results of our review of Raven's test suggests that the average IQ of African test takers is close to 80. We believe that the accuracy of estimates of national IQ of sub-Saharan African countries can be improved considerably. What Witchertz is saying here is that Lynn conducted bad science and that the average estimated IQ of poverty-stricken African people is actually close to average, which is usually defined as between 85 to 115. If their environment improves, so too with their average IQ scores, due to the Flynn effect. And remember, we are talking about countries that have faced civil war, famine, disrupted schooling, disease, and extreme poverty, not
essentially they face disease and Western intervention.
To mention constant exploitation by Western countries
that
literally persists to this day. The phone you're watching this video on contains cobalt, a chemical element that is abundant in the Congo. This element is mined using...
You mean poverty has negative effects? Surprising, I know. The current state of child labor and cobalt mines in the DRC. Yep. It's so sad. Look at these kids, man.
Child labor in the Congo, and not only does this mining degrade the environment and pollute the local water system, it results in birth defects of the children born there as they have high levels of cobalt and uranium in their blood. In 1996, the American Psychological Association's Task Force on Intelligence explicitly warned that environmental factors such as education, nutrition, and health significantly influence IQ test performance. If you ignore those variables and jump straight to biology, well, you're not following the science. So this brings us back to Zach's tweet.
I almost forgot about this point.
This claim is racist because it was made by a racist
I almost forgot about
purpose
this.
was to denigrate an entire continent to uphold white supremacist narratives like eugenics. The claim wasn't a fact because facts survive scrutiny. They don't collapse the moment you ask who collected the data and whether other researchers could replicate those results. If your worldview requires
but those are the facts that they need, though. They need the facts that just sound good in passing. They can continue being racist but hiding that fact, right? Like, I'm not racist. It's just anyone who's been around illegal and low income immigrants before knows that Minnesota daycare scams are just the tip of the iceberg. First off, what people have you been around with? You live with mold. This is happening all over the country and at $1 trillion scale. That's an impossible scale, just so you know. There is no way. Like, this is why I hate. Let me rephrase this in my head, because in my head I'm gonna be really upset. This is why it is very important for people to be able to engage in things critically and not have blinders for their favorite content creators. And I can comfortably say that no one in my audience feels any compunctions about challenging any take that I have, because, oh my God, you guys stay on my neck all the goddamn day. But to say that this is happening over $1 trillion at $1 trillion scale exposes that not only does she not know how much $1 trillion is, how could daycares be scamming out of trillions of dollars? Like, that's not like that's like, you understand how much $1 trillion is? $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Like, that's voters enable it because of white guilt. What voters haven't, like, okay, just break this down. He's saying that low income, you say basically immigrants scam a lot, right? And he's saying that voters enable it. Voters enable scams because of white guilt. So I have white guilt. Is this white guilt applies to everyone? Or are you only looking at voters as white people? Only white people vote. And if that's the case, why would they be voting? Oh, they feel guilty. They let them scam out of trillions? That's not how that shit works. And politicians because of votes. That's also not how that shit works. Like he just says this shit again. Zach is racist. He is 100% a racist, but he never wants to admit that, even though literally everything he says about non-white people is steeped heavily in racism. I mean, he just called Somalians borderline like mentally challenged as a whole group of people, just based off the fact that he doesn't like them because Trump has made them an enemy, and whatever Trump says, he goes for. This guy's called Asmongold for a reason. But nothing he says here is anything but pure racism, and he's shielding it a bit by his knowledge is stupid, but to everyone else, this is pure racism.
Somalia or any other African country to be permanently capped at 68 IQ in order to make sense, then the science wasn't the point. The conclusion is, and that, ironically, is narrative pushing.
Actually, you know what? Let's see what his defense is. We'll watch a little bit of this.
Exposing the grift, debunking Asmongold on IQ in less than 10 minutes. Well, thank God. I didn't want to watch it for that long, so it should be easy.
50 minutes.
Here we go.
In one of the most ironic social media posts of all time, Asmongold makes the claim in response to Mehdi Hassan.
The eyebrow thing is so just the We got how no, he sounds This is the person who is overconfident in their in their sense of self because of his audience. Like he tried to start off with a joke like, well, I didn't want to watch it for that long, so thank God.
That the average IQ in Somalia is 68, and that
I was rounding up, actually. It's like somewhere around 67.67.
You see, like when here's a little trick that people like him like to do, right? When they know that they can't defend anything, right? They're going to say, because he's absolutely not going to have any valid criticism, no defense for this shit, right? He wants to make everything a joke. Everything's a joke. They either go one of two ways. They go dead quiet, or everything's a joke. Everything's, I mean, he's 27 seconds in this video, has already stopped it twice to be like, oh, actually, I was rounding up.
But yeah.
This claim isn't racist, but a fact. What makes this post ironic is the very last bit where Zach claims Hassan's tweet is an attempt to push a narrative.
It absolutely is trying to push a narrative. It's trying to push the false narrative that...
Okay, let's get to the part where he actually shows like the data, right? I'd be interested to see how he tries to spin that.
Said, you're assigning negative variables and negative supremacists, etc.
Lynn published a paper in 1982 called IQ in Africa in the pseudoscientific journal The Mankind Quarterly, a white supremacist.
Why does he do that? He just goes like, yes. Like, shut the fuck up. Just wait until you want to talk and just pause and talk. I hate that so much.
This outlet that is currently...
See, he's trying to poison the well by saying that things are pseudoscientific, saying they're white supremacist, etc. You're not actually attacking the argument.
Boom. There we go. There we go. There we fucking go. There we go. He's saying that Birdman is trying to poison the well. When you are espousing the same logic that comes from a white supremacist, that is not well poisoning. That is showing where your facts come from. But he knows his audience is stupid, so he can say that. Birdman's not saying that it's pseudoscientific. The article that he's showing you is saying that it is a pseudoscientific journal that was promoted and started by white nationalists. Like, yeah, it's on the page. Of course it's on the page, but he cannot argue against what Birdman's saying. So he has to twist it. His audience, listen, the grifting audience is dumb. They're dumb. That's why people like him and Andy Pants can get off, because they're dumb. Their audience is stupid. It's literally on some don't trust your lying eyes. Listen to what I say instead type shit. Type shit.
You're not actually attacking anything that's being said.
And also, he's feigning knowledge what he says. Yep, exactly. But also, he's saying he's not attacking what's being said. Motherfucker, he is going through the logic. He's backgrounding. See, Asmongold is so allergic to any sort of form of research that when he sees it happening live in front of him, so he can follow along the logic of the person talking, he goes, oh, you're not immediately emotionally reacting to what I said. What is this whole taking your time to break down where my logic is coming from? No. That's not how I operate. You need to immediately go after my point, which he does by this whole video. This whole video is debunking your point.
Assigning negative variables and negative attributes to it, and then hoping that people, because of those negative variables and attributes that you're assigning to it.
Again, he's saying all of this in a video that's 9 minutes long, and he's not even halfway through it yet.
Will assume that it's wrong because they're not supposed to agree with things that have these attributes. That's what he's.
And that is a word sound of nothing. As like I said, there's no defense here. So let's go back a little bit further. Let's see how Asmongold tries to play it. Right? Let's go right here. Here we go.
Diversity Foundation.
Yes, because there's diversity between humans. That's correct.
Far-right white nationalist company.
Again, like none of this has anything to do with whether this is a good or an accurate thing at all.
It does. And this is the dishonesty they have to peddle in. If I am explaining to you that your belief that X group is mentally challenged or whatever, and I'm telling you that little nugget, that lie you've heard, it comes from a white supremacist and a white supremacist organization whose entire belief system is that they are superior to other races. How does that not automatically color the fact that the information that they're getting is going to be heavily skewed? It's not some sort of objective truth. He is literally, you're watching Asmongold live defend white supremacy. This is what he's doing by trying to sweep for it, by going, he's just trying to make it look bad. It's white supremacy, dog.
This is more again, and again, I want to take a step back. It's environmental, it's educational. There is also the factor of inbreeding, which is massive. All of these things have nothing to do with race, and they're still all factors for IQ. So what's happening is that you just have a person who's throwing a bunch of buzzwords at it to hopefully get people to disagree with what's being said.
And that's my favorite part of what they do. When they do the projection, they project, and that is the only time. Thank you for the super chat. The Birdman, he is literally going after the argument. Exactly. But do you see that part where Asmongold, for the one brief second, is honest? And he's honest about what he's doing. Not what Birdman's doing, but what Zach is doing. This part right here is what he does to a T.
Factors for IQ. So what's happening is that you just have a person who's throwing a bunch of buzzwords at it to hopefully get people to disagree with what's being said. You're trying to shut down conversation, and you have to keep in mind, let's go back and talk about that eugenics conference that was banned. The reason why these things are banned is because research into this topic isn't allowed. You have
research into this topic is not allowed. Do you see what's happening here, though? If you don't allow me to help you with this, he's trying to say that the reason why eugenics is banned is because research isn't allowed into this topic. They have done the research into eugenics. That's why it is not a valid source of scientific data. Because eugenics, not only is it bad, eugenics is not useful. There isn't data to show that eugenics or eugenic practices yield any sort of consistent outcomes. That is why. This is the equivalent of saying, you know why they don't teach about the humors anymore, right? It's because you're not allowed to look into it. It's the same shit when people talk about like how they're Nazis and they talk about, the Jewish question. Why can't why can't we ask about that? And it's like, because that in itself is not something worth analyzing. You are racist and you are trying to use science to find conclusions to your racism. You're not following science. You're being biased, and you're doing confirmation bias, which is not scientific at all. You've already reached conclusions, and now you're trying to work back and say, well, the reason why you can't ask about the Jewish question is because they control everything. No, that's not why. Oh, the reason why you can't do eugenics is because they want to shut down that conversation. Like, you're so uneducated, man.
To keep in mind that the father that invented DNA, or not invented, excuse me, discovered DNA, was effectively had his entire career destroyed because he said that there's a chance that there could be a racial basis for where IQ is coming from. And so the reason why there isn't a lot of research or information in this is because there is a wrong answer. And it's basically politicized science that has been effectively co-opted.
It's just like everything he's saying is wrong. Like, just think of it on its face. How can he have information as to it not being researched unless there was research to go over that? And again, eugenics is not a valid scientific field. This is like saying, why aren't people doing looks maxing? Why are there not looks maxing studies? It's not valid.
Opted by activists that will not let people have a conversation about this topic at all. That's the reason what's going on.
You're so stupid.
It's obvious.
Flynn argued
it's obvious.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
The guy's a critical drinker, generational hater. What is this? Pull this up. See this?
Drinker is a grifter. He's trying to tell the audience what he thinks they want to hear. Hilariously, it works on you, proving that the audience of grifters are very, very low IQ. Others can argue differently. There's no.
I mean, that's all true. So he gets sidetracked.
Notice I said sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, Lynn's argument was that a continent that consists of about 50 countries all had a similar very low IQ.
Yeah, it's like eugenics didn't have decades of research. I know. That's what I'm saying. Like eugenics has had a ton of research. That's why we know about it. Eugenics and scientific racism. Like, we know about eugenics. We've done it. How did it begin? What did eugenics do across the globe? Like people have been studying this. American eugenicists from a variety of disciplines declared certain individuals unfit, feeble-minded, and antisocial, which resulted in voluntary sterilization of at least 60,000 people throughout 30 state laws by the 1970s. Like, eugenics is not a valid form of science. It doesn't explore anything. What eugenics does is basically a confirmation bias. If you find someone that you deem to be inferior, let's say you're white and you're like, I don't like black people, and you stumble upon a black guy who's homeless, and you're like, see, they're lazy, they drink all day, all they do is like live off the government. That's your basis of an entire group of people. And so then you go looking to confirm that. You go to areas where people are impoverished and go, they don't know 2 + 2. See, they're all dumb. That's fucking eugenics. Like, that's eugenics in a nutshell. Eugenics has never been used for anything other than the promotion of racial superiorities. That's it. That's it. Because let's say, for example, that it's real, right? Let's say eugenics is a real. What is the outcome of eugenics? If I'm going to prove that all white people are inherently racist in their DNA, let's say I prove that, what's the outcome for that? What do you do? What's the end goal now? Oh, well, now we can see why they commit so much crime. Now we can see why white people do so much colonization. It's in their DNA. So then what's the next step? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's just using science as a permission structure to enact extreme levels of bigotry and racism. That's it. That's all it's for. That's all it's for. What kind of science falls apart the second it's scrutinized? Like Like this whole thing's not about Somalians. If you just name one Somalian that has more success than one white guy, the whole argument falls apart. The whole argument falls apart. That's it. That's why it's not registered. That's why it's not registered. Oh, that's why it's not recognized as a legitimate science. Something to be scientifically legitimate has to be able to endure rigorous and repeated testing and have the same or at least very consistent outcomes. That is how hard science works. If I create a formula for something, right? And I say, I put this atom together, I put these atoms together, and this comes out. And every time I do that, that is the end result. That is science happening right there. There is an underlying principle that won't allow for any other outcome to come out. Now, maybe sometimes it may stabilize for 10 seconds, maybe it's there for a second, but the outcome is this is produced. Like if every time you put hydrogen, oxygen, two hydrogen and oxygen together, and you didn't get water consistently, there's something wrong because we know H2O is water. We know what water looks like, what it feels like. That's science. It's a predictable outcome. If I throw something into the air, unless I am in a vacuum, it is going to come down. Why? Because that's a tested principle of gravity. It's going to accelerate back down at 9.8 meters per second because that is the speed on Earth at which gravity operates universally. These are scientific principles. It's been repeatedly studied and tested multiple times, and it's always yielded the same results. But if your science is this race is dumber than this race, then that means at no point ever will that race have anyone that has any intelligence equivocal to the other race. That means that will never happen. But that does happen all the time. That's why eugenics is fucking stupid. It's literally not science.
Okay. All of the European countries have similar IQs. All of the Asian countries have similar IQs.
That's also not true.
This tracks.
Has more than 200 ethnic groups, and that's a single country. Do you think Lynn tested every ethnic group in Nigeria, let alone...
Do you think that one of them is going to have a higher IQ than people in China?
That's not the argument, though, right? You see what he does immediately? He defaults to talking about China. That was never the argument. That was never the argument. Also, do you think people in America are going to have a higher IQ than people in China?
What are we doing?
You're deflecting, Asmongold. You're deflecting. Now he's goalpost moving.
Like, really, it's just so retarded that it's just like you think about this for 3 seconds.
Okay,
and
think.
You immediately realize that it's retarded.
Why?
Oh, my God.
What? See, again, when we watch this video without Asmongold there, that's a normal sentence. But now that Asmongold has to defend his points, he can't. So what does he say to a logical statement?
What are we doing?
Like,
is going to have a higher...
own has more than 200 ethnic groups, and that's a single country. Do you think Lynn tested every ethnic group in Nigeria, let alone...
Do you think that...
So Birdman says, do you think Lynn tested every group in Nigeria, let alone Sub-Sahara, right? Because that is a valid point. Because Flynn's assessment was that all Sub-Saharan Africa, which is an entire region of multiple different countries, all have an IQ of 70. All of them, no matter what. Birdman brings up a counterpoint. Did you test all those people? Did you even test enough of a sample size to extrapolate from that? Especially given the time where this data was taken. Did you do that work? Of course he didn't. And Asmongold knows that. So what does he counter with?
One of them is going to have a higher IQ than people in China.
When did China enter the conversation? When did China enter the conversation? I thought we were talking about Sub-Saharan Africa. Why are you talking about China? You were also talking about different groups, by the way. Like, even within China, I'm sure there are people within China who live in the rural parts who are just farmers, wouldn't have a big IQ pool as opposed to people who live in like the main cities. Like, again, China is not this. See, that's the thing. He's flattening everything. He just says China. You know, there are non-Chinese people who live in China that could also change the data. It's not purely people who you believe to be Chinese, right? If I am 6'9". I would say on average, I'm probably taller than the average Chinese person, right? Let's say I am in Shanghai and they are doing the average height of people in Shanghai and I am there. Do you not think my presence would skew the data? If everyone's like 5'2", 5'4", 5'6", 5'7", 6'9", you don't think that might throw off a little bit of the data? Not just one area. These are 103 ethnic groups within Nigeria. That's a country. You live in Texas. Is everyone in Texas as dumb as you? I would say no. Even though you guys keep voting for Abbott and fucking Cruz. But I would say no. Why? Because Texas has a diversity of people in there. I'm sure even in your friend group, there's someone out there smarter than you. Although I'm sure that friend group at this point is just a tech talent. In that case, no, maybe not. But he can't argue that point. So he just says, you think we're smart people in China? And then there's no follow-up. It's, what are we doing here? This is so stupid. If you just think about it for 3 seconds, okay, then tell me. And what does he have to say?
What are we doing? That it's just like you think about this for 3 seconds and you immediately realize that it's retarded. Oh my God.
The rest of the continent?
No answer, though. No answer. There's no answer for that. There's no answer for any of this.
Only thing that matters is whether the IQ is or isn't. If the IQ is so good, they have to keep living in mud huts rather than building other up. They've been doing it.
Okay, we're going to go into some pure racism, aren't we?
In other words, the environment is the most relevant variable in determining one's IQ score.
So why would you want to bring people from the country that have a bad environment into your country?
Again, he's making a completely separate but equally dumb point. People immigrate all the time for a multitude of reasons, including their environment being bad. Hey, genius, listen up, okay? As going to follow me along here. I'll try to dumb this down for you. Okay. Studies say good environment equal good outcome. Bad environment, bad outcome. People want good outcome. People go from bad environment, move to good environment, get good outcome, because environment different. People may come from bad environment, but then move to good environment and do good. That's the point. Why would you hear from a bad environment? You answered your own question. And ask it this way. Why would people in a bad environment want to leave their environment? Oh, because they want to seek a good environment, because they want good outcomes. Why would you leave your minimum wage job? Why would I hire a minimum wage worker? Because they don't want to be minimum wage and you need someone to work for you. Right? That's how it works. Like that's how that works. Why would someone in a bad environment want to get out? What a puzzle. And also, he has no answer for his own question.
Why would you want to do that? So like, I don't understand. Because like, so if your brain isn't developed properly because like for whatever reason, you know, environmentally or whatever else, who creates it? Well, they do. They're killing each other and cutting each other up. They've been.
There we go. I told you we were going to get into the pure racism part. Like, he's too racist to not go this way. He's too racist to not go this way. Who's doing it there? They're killing each other and cutting each other up. Ooh. See, now you say stuff like that, and you're trying to apply that to Africans as a whole. But if I look in America, if I just type in, let's just say shooting. I'm gonna just say shooting. Virginia, mass shooting leaves 2 dead. In Indianapolis, shooting. Another shooting. 2 killed in Ferguson shooting. Police investigate homicides. Victorville, home Sundown on Sundown Road. Obviously, gang shooting. Later accused and adopted. Shootings. We have daily shootings. We have daily. Just fuck it. I'm just shooting. Just say murder. You're suspected of wife's murder. Has fled to Hong Kong. Authorities say. I mean, the murder is going down, but still, we murder people. We kill people. We do all the same shit that Asmongold is accusing of just happening apparently to Africans. We murder people all the time. In fact, our own government is currently killing its own citizens. But of course, Asmongold has justified the deaths of people like Renee Good and Alex Peretti. He's justified these deaths. We've seen this. This is happening in America.
Been doing this for thousands of years. I mean, obviously, that's the reason why.
Thousands of years, you guys. That's all Africa has been. People just killing each other for thousands of years. Only in Africa. That's never happened anywhere else in the world.
And you can't understand their IQ is so good. They have to keep living in mud huts rather than building houses. Exactly what you said. Yeah, of course.
That's my favorite racism, by the way. Mud huts. You understand that their houses, first off, let's just clear this out of the way. This is in a impoverished area of Africa, right? In the slums. This is also in Africa. This is in Africa and Togo. These are also in Africa. This is also in Africa. This is also in Africa. This is in Johannesburg, which is in Africa. This is Africa. Africa is not. And even this is good architecture. What people don't like Asmongold and his ilk don't understand is you build for the environment that you fucking live in. Not everyone builds with concrete or with like bricks or with fucking wood and plywood, right? People in Latin American countries use concrete. Why? Because it's more durable. They don't have conditions over there like fucking tornado seasons where they need to build things that are cheap and they can rebuild quickly. This is also in Africa. You could look at, I could show you homes. This isn't fucking Texas. My data too much. This isn't Texas. This is Texas. This is in the state that Asmongold lives in, right? Right? They have mansions and shit. They also have ugly homes. They also have ugly places in Texas. This is in Texas. This is in Texas. These are also in Texas. These are in Texas too. Why I live in mud huts? Why do you guys live in fucking shacks? Jeez, what could be the difference? Oh man, is it like you're just looking at Houston's the dirtiest city in America? That's in Texas. Texas also has mansions. Texas also has shitty looking houses. They have impoverished areas. My state, California, everyone thinks we're rich out here, right? California has some dilapidated houses, dude. Anywhere in the world. I could show you Mexico. I could show you Paris. I could show you Japan. I could show you China. That's what it's going to be. I need to make it for the mud huts while bragging about using a rotting rat as a long. Exactly. Exactly. And again, people build for the area that they live in. They're trying to reduce it, but it's just mud huts. Well, it's clay first and foremost, and secondly, they do that because it's naturally insulating. So they live in remote areas. The people in remote areas don't have access to things that we have access to. Environmental, right? But guess what? Even in that environment, they still found ways to have shelter. So that would be a type of intelligence, right? That's what you call ingenuity. They have limited resources, and yet they are still able to provide shelter for themselves. They are still able to provide food for themselves, irrigation, plumbing, all those things. That's an act of intelligence. But again, because these people are dumb and racist, they have to go, oh yeah, they live in mud huts. They are self-sufficient. They've created community. They've had families, multiple generations. So what they're doing for them works in that environment. And that's them with limited resources. Imagine if they had equal resources to the average American citizen. That's also the answer to your other question, you dumbass.
So the thing is that it's not relevant to me whether the IQ is arrived at through racial, genetic, or environmental reasons. The only thing that matters is whether the IQ is or isn't. If you bring a bunch of people who are functionally retarded into your country, you're going to have a lot of problems. So
I wonder who brought you into this country.
why would you ever invite that type of chaos into your country? It doesn't matter where they're coming from. It doesn't matter why it's happening. Why would you ever do that?
It doesn't matter where they're coming from, but he only goes after Somalians and like Africans. He didn't say shit about people from Ukraine coming here. Well, like I said, we're not going to watch all this because there's no reason to watch all this. He's not intelligent. And so what he does, so Asmongold, like all these other losers, they can't argue the argument. So what they do is they simply go after the person because now he's suddenly obsessed with Birdman, right? Now he's scrolling through his shit. That's the same thing he did with me. Now he's scrolling through his shit. Now the rest of this video, again, there was a 9-minute video, 35 minutes. It's a 49-minute video. For the next 14 minutes, he's just going to go after Birdman now. And back, oh, see, he uses per capita incorrectly. Watch.
Something he knows nothing about. Using per capita for crime arrests is fudging of the... Gentlemen.
You see? You see? Because the Birdman's correct here. Using per capita for crime arrests is fudging numbers. The problem is that arrests don't take into account exonerations, and black people are the majority of exonerees. Yes, that is true. Arrests do not equate to criminals. People get arrested for protesting. That doesn't mean they're criminal masterminds. But again, these people are not interested in having any sort of good faith. They're not interested in anything of any sort of intellectual pursuit. All they're interested in is making sure their audience is always activated. They're always angry and dumb. Keeping people dumb and angry is a great way to extract financial value from them. He tries to be like, look at this. I'm going to do the whole, you got to be kidding me thing. It's true. He won't even look at the data, right?
Gentlemen.
He won't even look at the data, though. He won't even look at the data because the data disproves him.
Now, why are people in your rates below average? That's a good question, right? Oh my fucking God. The problem is arrests don't take into account exonerations, and black people are the majority of exonerees. Try again, 11 IQ. Surely, guys, surely there's nothing in per capita at all, and every group of people commits crime at the exact same ratio.
He doesn't even understand per capita, though. What Birdman is saying is that black people, and this is historically true, black and brown communities are overly policed. This is where I have my degree in, so I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Black and brown communities are over policed. When an area is over policed, you're naturally going to have higher numbers of arrests because that's where the focus is. If one area with one predominantly black and brown areas is over policed, that also means other areas are under policed. So when you account for those factors, of course, the data looks that way, which is why black and brown people also make up the vast majority of those who were exonerated. You want an example? I hear. Okay. Stop and frisk. The stop and frisk policy that was happening in New York was unconstitutional. And also, without me looking at this, I'm looking in the camera. The outcome was they stopped more black and brown people because essentially they could just look at you and say, I'm going to search you, look suspicious, because that was basically legalizing profiling. But what they found out was it was unreasonable search and seizure. It was unreasonable search and seizure. And the outcome was negligible because it had the same rates. Black people also were in trouble, but they were not arrested at the same rates. That's what fucking happened. Like that's what happened. Like, God damn. Black people arrested at higher rates. Brown people arrested at higher rates. and they were stopped because of stop and frisk. Black and brown people were stopped at higher rates, not because they were committing more crimes, but because there was an inherent racial bias in policing. All of this is I know he hates data, but these are backed up by immense amounts of studies. I don't even have to mention the Central Park Five. I don't have to mention Central Park Five. Aren't most Nigerians coming to USA highly educated? Yes. And most black women are the highest amount of degree holders in this country. Black women are Africans. Their DNA comes from Africa, right? They're genetically African. So shouldn't they have none of it because they shouldn't be attaining that? But eugenics is just science, you guys. Stop and frisk arrest rates are generally very low because the tactic often targets innocent individuals with weapons found in less than 0.2% NYC stops from 2008 and roughly 1% in DC from 2022 to 2023. While aimed at reducing crime, the strategy heavily relies on high volume, proactive, and often disproportionate stops of Black and Hispanic residents. Do some additional reading. Is it necessary to prevent crime? No. Although there is some evidence that police presence stops may reduce crime-specific crime areas, these tactics can negatively impact communities and individuals' mental health and physical health, and their relationship with the police. The stop and frisk have racially disparate impact. In cities nationwide, police have both stopped and used force against Black and Latino people at disproportionately high rates. Oh my God, making a direct threat to the safety and well-being communities of colors. Now, let's do some thinking. Let's do some thinking here. If just stop and frisk had nationwide higher rates of Black and Latino people being stopped prior to committing any crime, because the whole point of stop and frisk is a preventative, it's proactive. By the way, police cannot be proactive. Policing itself is a reactive element, it's not proactive. If it's proactive, it's profiling. But if they are being proactive, they are searching at a higher rate for Black and Latino people. Now, if you're a racist, your reasoning would be, well, of course, those are the crime racists, right? Black and Latinos do the crime. They're the crime racists. It makes sense to follow the crime racists. But if you're a normal thinking person, you go, hey, that's weird, isn't it? That a policy that just says we're going to stop and frisk suspicious people disproportionately targets Blacks and brown people. What does that say about what we consider to be suspicious people inherently? And weird, isn't it also weird that Black and brown people make up the majority of those arrested and also the majority of those exonerated? I wonder what the correlation there is. I wonder if there's historical evidence to prove how Black and brown people are treated by the police. I wonder if that's a thing. I wonder if that's a thing. But again, he can't do that level of analysis either because maybe his, let's just say, environment wasn't conducive to that sort of thinking, or that exposes his grift. So he has to just go like, oh yeah, I'm sure there's nothing there without going any deeper.
Of course. That's exactly the argument. Black people are over-policed and it gives rise to misconduct. Black people are over-policed and it gives rise to misconduct? Oh my God. Black people do not dominate crime statistics. White people do. That's why you idiots try to use, quote, per capita. This guy's dumber than I thought.
Nothing that Birdman said was wrong. Nothing he said was wrong at all. And Asmongold knows that, which is why, what is he doing? Hey, what's the thing these losers always say? Oh, ad hominem, that means you lost the argument. He's calling Birdman dumb, but he's not going against his argument. And yet, yes, it does sound like Asmongold is poisoning the well a bit, doesn't he? It's almost as if when I said he was projecting,
there probably are some degree of racial differences. Actor, say Japan. Would you bring immigration culture into my country?
It was at this part where he was talking about here, right?
A white supremacist outlet
saying they're whitely attacking anything that's being said and then hoping that people, because of those negative variables and attributes, the thing that's being said.
Let's just let Asmongold explain what. Let's just let Asmongold at 4 minutes and 53 minutes explain what he was doing at like 39 minutes.
You're not actually attacking the argument. You're not actually attacking anything that's being said. You're assigning negative variables and negative attributes to it, and then hoping that people, because of those negative variables and attributes that you're assigning to it, will assume that it's wrong because they're not supposed to agree with things that have these attributes. That's what he's doing. It's dishonest.
Maintained by the
Well said. Do you have anything else to add to Asmongold?
hilarious.
That's correct. This has anything to do with whether this is a good or an accurate thing at all. This is more, again, and again, I want to take a step back of it. And there's still all factors for words at it to hopefully get people to just, is that you just have a person who's throwing.
So Asmongold, do you have anything else to add to the statement you made? Because you really summarized what you were doing. Anything else?
A bunch of buzzwords at it to hopefully get people to disagree with what's being said. You're trying to shut down conversation, and you have to keep in mind, let's go back and talk about that eugenics conference that was banned. The reason why these things are banned is because research into this topic isn't allowed.
Research into this topic isn't allowed. But Asmongold, what happens when someone does research into a topic that you don't like? Are you going to allow it? Are you going to shut it down? Are you going to, what are you going to do?
Said that Somalians had a very low, wait, what is this? In case,
Because I'm pretty confident when he was showing you research, you shut it down, right? You called him dumb.
oh my God. Black people do not dominate crime statistics. White people do. That's why you idiots try to use, quote, per capita.
So at this point, if Asmongold isn't an obvious grifter that I've said many times is a projectionist, and what he really does is the exact same shit you just heard him say other people do, then at this point, he would look at this data, find data to either counteract that or break down this data in a way that could be interpreted in other ways. And he certainly wouldn't just go straight for ad hominem because, like they like to say, if you go for ad hominem, that means you can't beat my argument.
This guy's dumber than I thought.
Oh, dang. Dang. Wow, what a surprise. What a surprise, you guys. What a surprise. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? What? Honestly, shocking. Shocking to me that someone of Asmongold's caliber wouldn't be able to go against the data. It's almost as if everyone who critiques this guy is right. He's a grifter. He has no intelligence, right? Which is ironic given the topic we're talking about. But he himself, by his own standards, is mentally challenged. Mostly because of his environment he brought up in, for sure. But he has no way to argue any sort of conversation or any sort of points that have data to back him up. He can't. He himself has admitted he doesn't do research. He doesn't need to do research. He's just common sense, guys. Just common sense. So when someone tells you that, hey, these data can actually be skewed because you're looking at just arrest rates, and arresting just simply means taken into police custody, does not mean guilty, right? Just means you got arrested. Like I said before, you could go to a protest and be arrested for doing nothing but exercising your legal First Amendment rights, and they can arrest you. They can't keep you, though. People get released all the time because it's a bad arrest, but that arrest still holds. You did, in fact, get arrested. That is true. But were you convicted? Doesn't matter. My arrest rates. It's like when they talk about Japan and how this has no crime because they have a 100% conviction rate. They only have a 100% conviction rate or a high conviction rate because they only prosecute cases in which they can for sure win. If it's something like someone was sexually assaulted, they're not going to prosecute that. It's he said, she said. Oh, it looks bad on my end if I lose. They're not going to deal with that. So the data looks like, wow, they almost have zero sexual assault prosecutions. It must be a safe place for women. But then you realize, how come if I buy a phone from Japan, I can't turn off the shutter sound? Hey, what do you mean there's groping carts? Like, that's what he doesn't understand. Like, yes, data can be fudged. Science can be incorrect, which is why one of the core principles of science is rigorous and repeated testing. That's again why eugenics is not a valid form of science. It fails to uphold anything under scientific scrutiny. It fails science. It cannot be it. It fails it. None of these people care about science. None of these people care about any sort of truth. What they care about is convenience. It's convenient for him to just call Birdman stupid and to attack his character, right? That's convenient because when he was watching the video that he definitely thought was going to be bad, and he realized, oh shit, this is someone who does research. I can't defeat that. I'm going to immediately try to undermine it by making jokes, and then I'm going to immediately attack your character. I'm going to first off say that this is what you do to throw up any accusation against me of doing that, and then I'm going to do exactly what I accused you of. That's what he does. Asmongold cannot argue any of his points. That's also why he runs like a bitch from Hassan. Hassan has multiple times said he would talk to him again. And he's like, I'll never talk to him again because X, Y, and Z. It's because every time he talks to anybody that knows what they're talking about, Asmongold always folds. That's why they call him Asmonfold. Always folds. Always. Because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He confidently wades in the conversation he has no business being in. And he thinks he can just rely on just common sense, and then someone breaks down to him. These things have a history. The reason why this is worrying to people, because historically, this has been the outcome. We are in this stage. I can show you frame by frame how we are descending into Nazi Germany. So now your only defense is you're okay with going to Nazi Germany. But he can't outright admit that, right? He can't admit that ISIS acting is in the same capacity as Gestapo did in Nazi Germany. He can't admit that because then he can't willingly say, I love Nazi shit. Even though he wants to collab with Nick Fuentes, he still can hide behind, well, Nick Fuentes is just a streamer. He's that. But it's not something that he can argue. So he can't go into that arena. He has to bring it that way. Eugenics is scientific, but there's also a lot of pseudoscience surrounding it with specifically historical context. Yeah, eugenics is still a debunked science though. Like when people say shit is pseudoscientific, it's just another way of saying it's not scientific at all. It can't, like pseudoscience, it fails the rigidity of science.